سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد وصلى اللهم على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين. قال الله العزيز في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلوات على محمد Dear brothers and sisters, we have been talking about this surah of the Quran and the idea of إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who believe. And we have reached the final night of this discussion. I have only 20 minutes inshallah, and then we will do the laqiyya and have a Q&A as well. So I encourage everybody to stay for the Q&A as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making the ultimate statement, meaning without any exception except for those who mentioned in the later verses. This applies to everybody. Now I want to go back to the first verse and talk about this us. I mentioned the tafsir, but I want to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by the time, and the time after Karbala is the most difficult time for Al-Muhammad. One of the traditions that we often quote is a statement by Imam al-Sajjad. Somebody asked him, Ya Imam, where did you suffer the most? And 3 times he would say, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. And they asked him, Ya Imam, but Shahada, it is a tradition in your family. It is a tradition of the Prophet and the Imams. I'm paraphrasing, putting in my own words. So they asked why you cried. He said, is it tradition for our family that our women and children get paraded from city to city, street to street, town to town, village to village, throughout the Muslim world without veils on our heads and chain tied? Imam al-Sajjad is in chains, Bibi Zainab and the women are tied with the rope. And they say that especially when they entered the palace of Yazid, all of the women's hands were tied. But Sakina or Ruqayya was so small that her neck was tied. And with every movement of every hand of every woman in the caravan whose hands were tied with a single rope, they would move their hand, and Sakina or Ruqayya, her throat would get scratched by the rope. Dear brothers and sisters, yesterday, before the daytime, marked the end of an epic. The epic was of the 5 infallible ones, Ahlul Kisa. Where Ahlul Kisa, the first member of Ahlul Kisa is An-Nabi, then Ali, then Hassan, Hussain, Fatima, Al-Zahra. Karbala is that point in time which marks the end of Ahlul Kisa in the physical life. Of course, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتِلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Do not declare or say those who are slain in the way of God as dead. No, Allah sustains them. They have their sustenance with God, but you do not know. You do not know the extent of their life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not saying that their remembrance lives on forever. Of course, the remembrance of Imam al-Hussein, as long as there is existence, there will be the commemoration of Imam al-Hussein. that it goes without a single doubt or a single shadow of a doubt. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that Imam Hussein, he did not die on the day of Ashura. He became shaheed, meaning he is still alive. Not only is he alive, he is Sayyid al-Shuhada. I believe I said this last year as well. Look, an average shaheed is alive. Say the difference between an average shaheed or an average martyr and Sayyid al-Shuhada is that the average shaheed is alive, but Sayyid al-Shuhada is life itself. He gives life to whomever, wherever, or whatever he wants to. Karbala is alive. This is Baya in Urdu, this is Bayaban. Karbala was wilderness. Now we see the pictures. How many people, not just on Arba'in, you say the first of Muharram has arrived, and in Iraq they were a day after us. So I believe we did our first majlis on Tuesday, they did it on Wednesday. Now, when they did it, and Ashura was today for them, or it was Saturday for them rather. Today, right. It was today for them. How many millions of people went to the shrine of Imam al-Hussein and they said, Labbaika ya Hussein? How many people did throughout the world, not just in Karbala or in the United States or Pakistan or India or Iraq, look throughout the world. How many millions of people gave food on the day of Ashura? How many millions of people gave water on the day of Ashura? Not just in Karbala. Look, we get the blessing of having all of our, not just physical food, but we get the barakah of having the spirituality being quenched, the thirst of spirituality being quenched at the door of how, at the origin of how the Qawsar, which is Imam Hussein sallallahu alayhi wa. Now, if we have not made the statement or the vow, it is not on the part of Imam Hussein. We have to make this vow. Imam Hussein is life. If we want to be alive even after we die, then we need to commemorate, we need to live the principles of Imam Hussein. So many people gave their lives for Imam Hussein. And Brother Abu Ahmad and I were talking. Look at the life of the one who gave everything just like the way of Imam Hussein. Shaheed Abdul Awwal, Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, April 9th is the day of his Shahada. He is known for revolting against the tyrannical injustice of the Saddam government. And he is known as a soldier of Imam Hussein in the modern time. The modern day representative of Imam Hussein, who was given burial multiple times because Saddam's forces, the government wanted to desecrate the body of Shaheed al-Sadr. That's how much of a Husseini he was. Shaheed Sadr al-Awwal, Shaheed Sadr al-Thani. You look at his Shahada, he takes his cane and he pushes Saddam's soldier with the cane on the time of the Intifada Sha'baniyah. And he goes to his car, the soldier comes with his gun and he shoots him. The Sayyid lies down on the hospital gurney as if he knows this is his last breath. So many brothers and sisters in Afghanistan, they gave their lives for the preservation of the Shia identity of the Shia of Afghanistan. So many times we hear in Pakistan that so many shuhada were killed either during or before or after the majlis. What was this for? Look, if these people are remembered now, if Shaheed Baqir al-Sadr is remembered now, Shaheed Sadr Thani remembered now. If Bint al-Huda Amina Sadr is remembered now. If those who gave their lives fighting for Imam al-Hussein are remembered now, it is because of Imam Hussein. Without Imam Hussein, nobody, now may Allah, Shaheed Baqir is a genius. He deserves to be remembered. But you take away the connection with Imam Hussein, how many people are going to remember anybody? That is why one of the main reasons we have this Barsi or the anniversary majalis for our marhumin. Imam Hussein says, when you see this suffering, tragedy, death and destruction, remember me. But this keeps our loved ones alive. You know, in chaplaincy, they say you have to relate with the tradition of the person you are serving. Because to say, I did this once, I said to a Christian family whose father and husband was dying, and had died actually, that he is with the angels, he is with Jesus, he is with the Virgin Mary. They were like, no, I want him alive now. But look, in the school of Ahlul Bayt, we draw comfort in saying there is no suffering like the suffering of Imam Hussein. That comfort that we get is the ultimate comfort. Meaning, if Sayyida Zainab could go through so many difficulties for however long, 40 days in the Arab and the Iranian tradition, year-long imprisonment in the Jabhat subcontinent belief, what about us? What about me and you? Our suffering is nothing compared to their suffering. And I just mentioned the Sadr ulama. I was talking to Sayyid Hamid al-Sadr, Imam Musa al-Sadr's son. And I said to him, the suffering of your family is the suffering of Ahlul Bayt. I said this openly. I said this openly. He says, brother, we do not deserve to be compared to Ahlul Bayt. This is taqwa. This is faith. Where we say that there is no suffering like the suffering of Hussein. There is no suffering like the suffering of Ali Akbar. There is no suffering. But look, dear brothers and sisters, I make this statement openly. Where the suffering of Imam al-Hussein ends, whereas the suffering of Imam al-Hussein ends on the day of Ashura, the suffering of Ali Akbar ends on the day of Ashura, the suffering of Qasim, Abul Fadl Abbas, John, Hur, Habib, Zuhair ibn Qayn, Mulayd Hamadani, all these companions, and Ahlul Bayt, the male members of the caravan of Abu Abdullah, their suffering ends on the day of Ashura. The suffering of Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha just begins on Sham al-Gharib. The suffering of Sakina begins on Sham al-Gharib. The suffering of Imam Sajjad begins on Sham al-Gharib. The suffering of Rubab, of Layla, of Farwa, of Farwa, Fidda, all of their suffering begins on Sham al-Gharib. Dear brothers and sisters, where the sabr, the imtihan of the sabr of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein ends, the imtihan of the sabr of Sayyida Zainab Salamullahi alayha starts. And you know what the story is, your brothers and sisters? They say, after everything was done, the tents were looted, and all of Sham al-Gharibah occurred, when Ahlul Bayt on the next day they were being gathered for this trial and tribulation. Ahlul Bayt were being put on their camels and they were being paraded. The first time they went out was to go to the Maqtal of Al-Muhammad, was to go to Ganj Shahida and the Maqtal to make Ahlul Bayt suffer and make them lose over the bodies of their deceased ones, dear brothers and sisters. They say, when Lady Zainab, one of the narrations say, that when Imam al-Sajjad saw the body of his father decapitated, headless, Imagine what state Imam al-Sajjad must have been. It is sad enough to lose a father, to lose a loved one, to lose someone you respect and care for. But Imam al-Sajjad is in chains. He cannot give his father kafan. He cannot give him his burial rites, dear brothers and sisters. Dear brothers and sisters, they say Ahl al-Bayt were being paraded through the Maqtal. Imam al-Sajjad, when he looked at his father's body, his face turned pale. Lady Zainab salamullahi alayha, noticing the athar of maut on Imam al-Sajjad, she falls from her camel. Imam al-Sajjad looks at this and he says to his Auntie Zainab, Auntie Zainab, what happened? What happened? Why did you fall? She says to him, Oh Sajjad, look at your condition. He says to her Auntie Zainab, woe to the son who sees his father's body in such a condition, yet he cannot give his father proper ghusl and kafan. He cannot give his father proper ghusl and kafan. Now, dear brothers and sisters, this was one of the most difficult times for Imam al-Sajjad, seeing as this was the first difficult time, major difficult time for Imam al-Sajjad, when he saw his father's body like that. Dear brothers and sisters, they were starting to be paraded throughout the Muslim world. The suffering of Ahl Bayt after Karbala was just beginning. They say that all the heads were being put on lances. Harmala noticed one head was missing. Lubab right now, she is comforted by the fact that her 6-month-old baby is in the ground. Harmala takes a spear and he goes to the back of where the tents were. He takes his spear and he pierces the ground once, nothing happens. He takes his spear again and he pierces the ground a second time and nothing happens. He pierces the ground again a third time, and they say that the 6-month-old body rose up with the spear, and Harmala cut the head off of Ali Asghar, and he put the head of Ali Asghar as well on a lance, dear brothers and sisters. But the suffering of Ahlul Bayt does not finish there. I don't want to get into the entry of Ahlul Bayt in Kufa. I want to say something right here and right now, dear brothers and sisters. Ahlul Bayt, they say, in the traveling from Karbala to Kufa, they say that the head of Imam al-Hussein fell off at one time from its spear. Harmala and Umar ibn Sa'd came. They say that the head won't move. They went to Imam al-Sajjad and they start beating him and lashing him, saying to him, why won't the head move? Go ask your father. We know that if the head of Hussein will not move, the caravan will not go forward. Dear brothers and sisters, these mana'een, they had no mercy on Imam al-Sajjad. They went to the Imam and they beat him. Imam al-Sajjad, he goes to the head of his father and he says, oh father, why aren't you moving? What's wrong, dear father? He says to his son, oh Sajjad, my 4-year-old little daughter has fallen off her camel. He says to him, I will not move until they find her. Imam al-Sajjad tells his auntie, Lady Zainab salamullahi alayha, dear brothers and sisters, Lady Zainab goes back. She says she sees Sakina. She is at the side of on the lap of an old lady. This old lady she cannot recognize. She says Lady Sakina has her head on the lap of this old lady and she is resting. She says to this old lady, you have had mercy on my family on a day and a time where nobody has mercy on us. Please tell me your name. This way I and my mother can do shafa'ah for you. On the mahshar, she looks at Zainab and says, Zainab, don't you recognize your own mother? It's me, Fatima. I have come from Khul to see Sakina. Dear brothers and sisters, they say from Karbala to Kufa and Kufa to Sham, they had the camels run from Karbala to Kufa and Kufa to Sham. Dear brothers and sisters, That's because every time a child would fall, they would fall crying out for their mother to come help them, and they would make the camels run so that the mother could not help the child. But for Ruqayya or for Sakina, they had a different mode of making her suffer even more. She would fall. They would have the caravan wait for her. She would run back to the caravan. They would force her to back onto her camel. She would fall again. They would run, they would wait for her again. She would run to the camel again. She would fall again. Finally, there came a time where they said, enough of this. They took Sakina on a bare camel back. They tied her to the back of the camel. Dear brothers and sisters, imagine the harshness of the camel's back. I want to finish with this riwayah, dear brothers and sisters. I know I said I will not mention Ahlul Bayt entering Kufa, but just a few minutes. There was, when Ahlul Bayt were being paraded in Kufa, one of the servants of Sayyidah Zainab, former servant Habiba, she got married and she moved to Kufa. Habiba, she was told by her man, she was told about a time, Habiba herself, when she realized that there were prisoners being paraded in the city of Kufa, she says to her servants, let us go see them. She went to the top of the roof of her house. She knows Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha. She knows Sayyidah Zainab. She cannot recognize Sayyidah Zainab. All she sees is a woman, and next to this woman is a 4-year-old girl. She looks thirsty. She asks this little girl, are you thirsty? The little girl does not say anything. She is too distraught and stressed and tired and hungry and thirsty to say anything. Lady Zainab says for her, yes, she is thirsty. Do you want me to get you some water? She says yes. This Habiba gets water in a bowl for Sakina. Sakina looks at the water. She looks at Bibi Zainab. She looks at the water. She looks at Bibi Zainab. Bibi Zainab knew what was happening. Ahlul Bayt were always in the nature of giving, never taking. She says, Sakina, you are the granddaughter of Fatima Al-Zahra. If you make dua, your dua will be accepted right away, so do dua. She says to this lady, do you have any dua? She says, yes, I have dua. 2 duas, and I conclude with this point. She says, 1, pray that my children never become yatim as you did. Pray that my children never become yatim as you. And then pray that I go back to the city of Medina. The lady Zainab, here in the city of Medina, she asks this lady, who do you have in Medina? This lady says, my master Hussein is in Medina. My master Abbas is in Medina. My master Ali Akbar is in Medina. My master Qasim is in Medina. She says, my mistress Lady Zainab is in Medina. My Habiba, when she says this, Lady Zainab says, tell me if your Zainab were here right now, would you recognize her? She says, of course I would. Bibi Zainab removes the hair from her head. She says to her, Habiba, recognize me, this is Zainab. Recognize me now. Habiba, some traditions say she got so shocked that she passed out. As soon as she gained consciousness, she looked at Bibi Zainab and said, oh Bibi Zainab, this is you. Whatever happened to your brother Abbas? Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.